We are ready for talks. Just as we had raised this issue during the time of our martyred Supreme Leader, we are now also ready to reassure the world that we are not seeking nuclear weapons. We are not seeking instability in the region. The destabilizing force in the region is Israel, which is pursuing the Greater Israel Plan and is conspiring in various ways to sustain war, instability, and division in the region. Certainly, we and those taking part in the negotiations will in no way retreat from the country's dignity and pride in that regard. As Iran digs in on its nuclear red lines, is the White House now walking on eggshells, trying to keep ceasefire hopes alive while knowing Tehran will not simply bend on enrichment and stockpiles? When Trump boasts that he doesn't make bad deals, is he confidently setting the terms, or quietly too wary to needle Mojtaba into a confrontation that could blow up fragile talks? And as Trump tries to steer around a direct showdown with Mojtaba, is Netanyahu beginning to panic that Washington may accept a softer outcome than Israel's hard demands on Iran's nuclear program? When Trump says the final deal is totally up to me, is he really trying to reassure Arab allies that he won't surrender leverage, just as Iran makes clear it will not simply give up its nuclear cards? Amid rising hopes for a ceasefire framework, Trump is now insisting that only he can decide Iran's future, portraying himself as the sole arbiter of any final arrangement. On May 24, he told an American network that signing any final Iran deal is totally up to me, stressing that nothing will be agreed without his personal approval. Trump insisted that if there's news, it's only going to be good news, adding that he doesn't make bad deals, a line meant to reassure both domestic supporters and nervous partners abroad. He said he has instructed his negotiators not to rush into a deal with Tehran, arguing that moving too fast could lock in terms that fall short of US objectives. Trump claimed that time is on our side as talks continue, signaling that he believes Iran is under more pressure from sanctions and the blockade than Washington is from the war's costs. Officials in Washington have made clear the naval blockade on Iran will remain in place until an agreement is reached and signed, keeping economic and military pressure firmly on Tehran during negotiations. Trump said, and I quote, "One of the worst deals ever made by our country was the Iran nuclear deal, put forth and signed into existence by Barack Hussein Obama and the rank amateurs of the Obama administration. It was a direct path to Iran developing a nuclear weapon. Not so with the transaction currently being negotiated with Iran by the Trump administration, the exact opposite, in fact. The negotiations are proceeding in an orderly and constructive manner, and I have informed my representatives not to rush into a deal in that time is on our side. The blockade will remain in full force and effect until an agreement is reached, certified, and signed. Both sides must take their time and get it right. There can be no mistakes. Our relationship with Iran is becoming a much more professional and productive one. They must understand, however, that they cannot develop or procure a nuclear weapon or bomb." Unquote. Meanwhile, Benjamin Netanyahu has said Trump personally assured him that Iran's nuclear threat will be eliminated, not just managed or delayed. Netanyahu claims their discussions covered security in the Strait of Hormuz, ceasefire terms on current battlefields and, crucially, the shape of final-stage nuclear negotiations. The Israeli premier insists any final deal must dismantle Iran's enrichment facilities, arguing that merely limiting or monitoring them is not enough to guarantee long-term security. He has also demanded that enriched uranium be physically removed from Iranian territory, saying that as long as the material stays inside Iran, the risk of a breakout remains. However, reports say Iran currently refuses to discuss detailed nuclear issues in the present round of Memorandum of Understanding talks, keeping that file off the table for now. Tehran reportedly wants nuclear questions postponed until later, final agreement negotiations, hoping to secure security guarantees and sanctions relief language before touching its most sensitive program. Iranian state media reported on May 24 that Tehran has not accepted any specific nuclear action as part of the current talks with Washington, pushing back on speculation that a detailed deal is already in place. This clarification followed US officials telling the New York Times that Iran may be prepared in principle to give up its stockpile of highly enriched uranium as part of a broader understanding. According to those reports, Iran has so far offered only a general commitment rather than precise, binding terms on what would happen to its enriched uranium. The question of how, where, and under what verification Iran would relinquish or neutralize that material would be worked out later, the New York Times report said. All this comes despite earlier reporting that Supreme Leader Mojtaba opposed sending enriched uranium abroad, a key sticking point in past negotiations. IRGC-linked outlet Tasnim News has reported that peace talks could begin with a limited memorandum of understanding between Iran and the US rather than a full, formal agreement. The reported draft memorandum would temporarily waive some US sanctions on Iranian oil exports, offering Tehran economic breathing space. That waiver would allow Iran to sell oil without the current sanctions-related limits on volume and buyers, at least for a defined period. The same draft reportedly calls for a halt to fighting across all fronts in the Middle East, linking nuclear and regional de-escalation. Tasnim News also says the proposal explicitly includes Lebanon in this wider ceasefire framework, which would directly affect the Hezbollah-Israel front. Additionally, the draft envisions that steps related to the Strait of Hormuz and maritime security there would be implemented within 30 days of the understanding taking effect. The framework reportedly sets a 60-day timeline to begin and advance more formal nuclear negotiations, suggesting this MOU would function as a temporary off-ramp rather than a full revival of the old deal. Donald Trump made a major claim about ongoing Iran negotiations while gunfire erupted outside the White House on May 23, according to official statements and social media posts. The US president announced on Truth Social that a US-Iran agreement had been largely negotiated, pending final details and formalization. He also stated that he held a very good call with regional leaders and a separate discussion with the Israeli Prime Minister during the same period. Donald Trump said, and I quote, "I am in the Oval Office at the White House where we just had a very good call with the leaders of countries across the region, and all things related to a memorandum of understanding pertaining to peace. An agreement has been largely negotiated, subject to finalization between the US, Islamic Republic of Iran, and the various other countries, as listed. Final aspects and details of the deal are currently being discussed, and will be announced shortly. In addition to many other elements of the agreement, the Strait of Hormuz will be opened," unquote. Trump's statement did not include any direct reference to Iran's nuclear program or its uranium stockpile. Shortly after, Iranian state-linked media outlet Fars News Agency pushed back against the claims, saying the status of the Strait of Hormuz remained under Iranian control. Fars described the US president's account of the negotiations as incomplete and inconsistent with the situation on the ground. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Baghai said Tehran and Washington were moving closer to a 14-point memorandum of understanding. Ismail Baghai said, and I quote, "We are now in the finalization stage of this memorandum of understanding. The topics being discussed at this stage focus broadly on ending the war, halting the US naval aggression, what they themselves have labeled a naval blockade, and issues related to the release of Iran's blocked assets. Our approach has been to first draft a memorandum of understanding consisting of 14 articles. That memorandum would include the most important issues necessary to end the imposed war and matters of fundamental importance to us. Subsequently, within a reasonable time frame of 30 to 60 days, the two sides would discuss the details of these issues and ultimately reach a final agreement," unquote. Baghai said issues related to Iran's nuclear program were not currently part of the discussions. He also stated that the Strait of Hormuz was not under US jurisdiction and should be managed by regional stakeholders such as Iran and Oman. Ismail Baghai said Iran and Oman should jointly determine the future management mechanism of the Strait of Hormuz, stressing that both countries are coastal states responsible for ensuring safe transit. At the same time, reporting from the New York Times suggested that Tehran had agreed to a broader framework involving a halt to fighting and possible reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. The report also claimed that discussions included the potential release of frozen Iranian assets worth billions of dollars, alongside wider regional de-escalation measures. Additional reporting from the Times indicated that Arab and Muslim majority leaders were encouraging acceptance of the proposed framework. At the same time, Axios reported that the United States and Iran are close to finalizing a proposed 60-day ceasefire agreement. The report said the proposed memorandum of understanding would extend the current ceasefire arrangement for another 60 days while broader negotiations continue. Under the reported framework, the Strait of Hormuz would reopen for commercial shipping, with Iran expected to remove mines deployed across the strait.